So in this problem, we're given some percentages and asked to figure out the probability that a visit to a PCP's office results in both lab work and referral to a specialist. So the first thing that we'll do to simplify this problem a little bit is just to go ahead and make a little table. So there are really two possibilities. They're referred to specialists, or they require lab work, or neither of the two. So let's set up a little table, and in this little table we'll make a 2 by 2. And what we'll do here is along the rows we're going to say these are people who are referred to specialists. So we'll say referred to a specialist. Well, if you're not referred to a specialist, then you fall into the other category. So either you are or you're not referred to a specialist. That's why we can break this up into two groups. The second possibility is that we require lab work. So you either have lab work or you do not have lab work. Oops, I changed that. So you either have lab work or you do not have lab work, and now we can start to fill in some of these blanks. So for simplicity, so that we're not working with percentages, if that makes you uncomfortable, we can actually make these into numbers. So let's just say we have n equals 100 people. So that's the total number of people in our sample. And now we can start to identify the things that we have. So the probability that a visit to a primary care physician's office results in neither lab work nor referral to a specialist is 35%. So that means you're not getting lab work and you're not getting referred to a specialist. It means you fall into this box right here. So there are 35 people out of every 100. Of those coming to a PCP's office, 30% are referred to specialists. Okay, so that means specialists, well, that's this row right here. Now, that doesn't tell us anything about those people who are referred to specialists, whether they do or don't get lab work. So that's the total number of people having specialists. So that number right there is going to be 30. And I'll just put that on the outside to indicate that this row adds up to 30. And 40% require lab work. So here's the lab work column. 40 of those 100 require lab work. We know that in this corner we'll just put 100 because it needs to add up. The total number of people in this entire box, so these four squares have to add up to 100, as well as do this total, lab work, no lab work, and specialist, no specialist. Okay, so now we can start to fill in some of the blanks. Well, what can we fill in here? The first thing that we can do is we know that these have to add up to 100 this way. So 40 require lab work, that means the other 60 don't require lab work. 30 require a specialist, that means 70 do not require a specialist. Well, that also allows us to finish the rest of the table. So we know that 70 do not need a specialist, 35 are in the no lab column, so that means this value right here plus this value, so I'll just call this, right now we'll just go ahead and call this X, and I'll just do this in purple. I'll say X is right here. We can call this Y and Z if we want. It doesn't really matter what you call it. If you already see the answer, you don't have to really do this, but this is just to make it a little bit more formal if you prefer. So we know that X plus 35 has to equal 70, and so that means X is equal to 35. Okay, so really it's 70 minus 35, and this has to be 35 as well. Okay, well, same thing goes here. We know that Y plus 35 has to equal 40. So that means Y has to equal 5. And that's 40 minus 35. So this has to equal 5 right here. And you're probably getting the picture here. 5 plus something has to equal 30, and that something has to be 25. So that helps us fill in the table. Now, you should be able to double check to make sure that 35 plus 35, well, we found that was 70, but does 25 plus 35 equal 60? Yes, it does, so everything in this table seems to work out just fine. Now the question was, determine the probability that a visit to a PCP's office results in both lab work and referral to a specialist. So of these 100, how many required lab work and a specialist? Well, there were 5 of them. That's the specialist lab cell. So probability that you need specialist and lab is equal to, well, the number of people who required both of those divided by the total number of people in the study, which is 100. Now that comes out to about 5%.